All right, welcome back to our daily read aloud, My Side of the Mountain. Today we are starting a new chapter, but first let's review what happened last time. So we know that he got the little falcon, okay? How did he have to get the falcon? It was not easy. Cadence, what did he have to do?
You have to go to the library and get a book and research.
Okay, so first he learned about them. When he actually got his little baby falcon, where did he have to go to get her? Angie?
The nest and the baddest thing was the mother.
Yes.
Falcons are very protective.
Yes, so most mothers are very protective. So this falcon nest, they like to nest on the sides of cliffs. So Sam Gribley had to scale the side of a cliff to get the little bird. And when he got up there, Angie's right, the mother bird came back and started attacking him, right? Flying full speed. And think about it, she's got that big beak and those talons, right? So scary.
And I think the book said that it went into his skin.
Yeah, he got hit a couple times. So he's got some blood, he's got some issues. He also got his falcon, and he already named her Frightful because of how scary that situation was. Hayden?
I think he touched he pooped.
Yes, that when he was getting close, right, his hand touched something moist, and we all thought about what that might be. It was bird droppings. So that's how we knew he was by the nest. All right, but then he tries to go home. He can't go home to his tree. Does anyone remember why he couldn't go back? Eric?
Because the mama bird will dying and then he'll get kind of an attack.
Okay, so he might be worried about that, but that was not the reason he couldn't. Madeline, do you remember?
It was because there was the person saw the fire.
Yes, remember there was a game warden there. So he's assuming he's out there living where no one's supposed to be living, and he has a fire that puts smoke up. And so he thinks one of the airplanes that looks for wildfires and all that saw his smoke and sent someone to that spot, and the game warden found his camp. He's just staying there hanging out. So Sam and Frightful went somewhere else. I think he made some catfish. He's like, we don't have to go back to the tree. We'll be fine. All right. And that was the end of that chapter. All right, the next chapter, I learned to season my food. The fire warden made a fire sometime in the colder hours of the night. At dawn, he was asleep beside white smoldering ashes. I crawled back to the gorge, fed Frightful rabbit bites, and slipped back to the edge of the meadow to check a box trap I had set the day before. I made it by tying small sticks together like a log cabin. This trap was better than the snares or deadfalls. It had caught numerous rabbits, several squirrels, and a groundhog. I saw as I inched toward it that it was closed. The sight of a closed trap excites me to this day. I still can't believe the animals don't understand why delicious food is in such a ridiculous spot. So if you don't know how these traps work, a live trap, it's some sort of a mechanism where you've put a lure inside. So it's something the animal wants to eat usually. So when the animal walks inside, something happens to cause the door to close behind them. Kind of like the rats in Mrs. Frisbee, those little cages. So he is able to lure something into that box and the door will close and then he has a meal. Madeline?
Usually they have a stick, and then when they bump into the stick on accident, and then it falls in there.
Yep. So it could be something just like that. So something is in there. Josiah?
There's a part that shows how it works. And since you don't show the pictures, it's like a tree, and when the animal touches it, the tree will fall down on them.
Yep. Okay. Well, this morning I pulled the trap deep into the woods to open it. The trapped animal was light. I couldn't guess what it was. It was also active, flipping and darting from one corner to the next. I peeked in to locate it so that I could grab it quickly behind the head without getting bitten. I was not always successful at this, and I had the scars to prove it. I put my eye to the crack. A rumpus arose in the darkness. Two bright eyes shone, and out through that hole that was no wider than a string bean came a weasel. He flew right out at me, landed on my shoulder, gave me a lecture that I shall never forget, and vanished under the scant cover of trillium and bloodroot leaves. He popped up about 5 feet away and stood on his hind feet to lecture me again. What does Sam mean when he says he's lecturing him? Is he telling him to have a growth mindset like our lecture this morning?
No.
What's he doing? Any ideas? It's kind of like figurative language. Josiah?
He's sort of like taunting.
Yeah, good use of vocab. He's taunting him. So if I just stood here and talk at you, it's kind of like I'm lecturing you, right? I'm just going on and on and on. You've heard it happen. I do that sometimes. So if an animal's doing that at you, it's kind of, talking at you. Do you think it's a little bit upset with you?
Yeah.
Probably.
My dog is usually upset.
All right. So he's lecturing me again. I said, scat. So he darted right to my knee, put his broad furry paws on my pants, and looked me in the face. I shall never forget the fear and wonder that I felt at the bravery of that weasel. He stood his ground and berated me. I could see by the flash of his eyes and the curl of his lip that he was furious at me for trapping him. He couldn't talk, but I knew what he meant. Wonder filled me as I realized he was absolutely unafraid. No other animal, and I knew quite a few by now, had been so brave in my presence. Screaming, he jumped on me. This surprised and scared me. He leapt from my lap to my head, took a mouthful of hair, and wrestled it. My goosebumps rose. I was too frightened to move. A good thing, too, because I guess he figured I was not going to fight back, and his scream of anger changed to a purr of peace. Still, I couldn't move. All right, I just want to see hands. If you were Sam Gribley in the woods and a wild weasel was on your head, would you enjoy that, or would you be terrified? So first, raise your hand if you would enjoy that. Okay. Raise your hand if you would be terrified.
Like terrified.
Okay, now raise your hand if you'd be a little mixture of all of them. I think that's where I'd be. I would be confused, amazed, and a little terrified.
Keep it as a pet, not eat it.
All right, let's see what happens. Presently, down he climbed, as stately as royalty, and off he marched, never looking back. He sank beneath the leaves like a fish beneath the water. Not a stem rippled to mark his way. And so, the Baron and I met for the first time, and it was the beginning of a harassing but wonderful friendship. So his name is the Baron Weasel. Frightful had been watching all this. She was tense with fright. Although young and inexperienced, she knew an enemy when she saw one. I picked her up and whispered into her birdy-smelling neck feathers. You wild ones know. Since I couldn't go home, I decided to spend the day in the marsh down the west side of the mountain. There were lots of cattails and frogs there. Frightful balanced on my fist as we walked. She had learned that in a short span of one afternoon and a night. She was a very bright bird. On our way, we scared up a deer. It was a doe. I watched her dart gracefully away and said to Frightful, "That's what I want. I need a door for my house, tethers for you, and a blanket for me. How am I going to get a deer?" This was not the first time I had said this. The forest was full of deer, and I already had drawn plans on a piece of birch bark for deadfalls, pit traps, and snares. None seemed workable. The day passed. In the early evening, we stole home, tree by tree, to find that the warden had gone. I cleaned up my front yard, scattered needles over the bare spots, and started a small fire with very dry wood that would not smoke much. No more wardens for me. I liked my tree, and although I could live somewhere else, I certainly did not want to. Once home, I immediately started to work again. I had a device I wanted to try, and put some hickory sticks in a tin can and set it to boiling while I fixed dinner. Before going to bed, I noted this on a piece of birch bark. So birch bark, does anyone know what birch bark looks like? Eric?
It's like white.
Yeah, it's the white trees that peel. It almost looks like paper coming off.
I have a tree in my front yard like that.
So I want to tell you, if you ever are like hiking and you see trees like that, don't peel them or carve on them because it hurts the tree. But if you find the pieces on the ground, you can almost make like a journal out of them. People used to use them like paper. They're also really good to get your fire going. If you ever see the little birch bark white strips on the ground. Liam?
What does doe mean when he was talking about?
It's a female deer. So a male deer is a buck with the antlers. So this would be a female deer with no antlers. Okay. All right. So what he's writing on this birch bark, what he's doing in that tin can, and he's trying to make salt. So let's hear how he does it. You think that would make your food taste better if you had some salt? Yeah.
Especially fried.
Yes. This night, I am making salt. I know that people in the early days got along without it, but I think some of these wild foods would taste better with some flavoring. I understand that hickory sticks, boiled dry, leave a salty residue. I am trying it. In the morning I added, it is quite true. The can is dry and thick with a black substance. It is very salty, and I tried it on frog's legs for breakfast. It is just what I needed. So now he's got some seasonings, which if you've ever seen anyone cooking, usually they put some salt and pepper or seasonings in your food, right? If not, it's kind of bland. And so I went into salt production for several days and chipped out a niche inside the tree in which to store it. June 19th. I finished my bed today. The ash slats work very well and are quite springy and comfortable. The bed just fits in the right-hand side of my tree. I have hemlock boughs on it now, but hope to have a deer hide soon. I am making a figure 4 trap as tall as me with a log on it that I can barely lift. It doesn't look workable. I wish there was another way of getting a deer. June 20th. I decided today to dig a pit to trap a deer, so I am whittling a shovel out of a board I found in the stream this morning. That stream's very useful. It has given me tin cans for pots and now an oaken board for a shovel. Frightful will hop from stump to my fist. She still can't fly. Her wing feathers are only about an inch long. I think she likes me. All right, now I'm going to show online first. Here's a picture of his bed. All right, now I'm going to pause you and I'll be right back. All right, I am back. And we are going to start the very next chapter just a little bit and then we'll be done. Our next chapter is called How a Door Came to Me. One morning, before the wood peewees were up, I was smoking a mess of fish I'd caught in the stream. When I caught more than I could eat, I would bone them, put them on a rack of sticks, and slowly smoke them until they dried out. This is the best way to preserve extra food. However, if you try it, remember to use a hardwood. Hickory's the best. I tried pine on the first batch and ruined them with black tarry smoke. Well, it was very silent. Then came a scream. I jumped into my tree. Presently, I had enough nerve to look out. Baron Weasel, I said in astonishment. I was sure it was the same weasel I'd met in the trap. He was on the boulder in front of the hemlock, batting at the ferns with his front feet and rearing and staring at me. Now, you stay right there, I said. Of course, he flipped and came off the rock like a jet stream. He was at the door before I could stop him and loping around my feet like a bouncing ball. You look glad all over, Baron. I hope all that friskiness means joy. He took my pant leg in his teeth, tugged it, and then ripped softly back to the boulder. He went down a small hole. He popped up again, bit a fern nearby, and ran around the boulder. I crept out to look for him. No weasel. I poked a stick in the hole at the base of the rock, trying to provoke him. I felt a little jumpy. So that when a shot rang out through the woods, I leapt a foot in the air and dove into my hole. A cricket chirped, a catbird scratched the leaves. I waited. 1 enormous minute later, a dark form ran into the meadow. It stumbled and fell. I had the impression that it was a deer. Without waiting to consider what I might be running toward, I burst to the edge of the meadow. No one was in sight. I ran into the grass. There lay a dead deer. With all my strength, I dragged the heavy animal into the woods. I then hurried to my tree, gathered up the hemlock boughs on my bed, rushed back, and threw them over the carcass. I stuck a few ferns in them so they would look as if they were growing there, and ran back to camp breathless. Hurriedly, I put out the fire, covered it with dirt, hid my smoking rack in the spring, grabbed Frightful, and got in my tree. Someone was poaching, and he might be along in a minute to collect his prize. What is poaching? We talked about this a little. Quentin?
It's like if you're not in the right season, then you're going out to camp animals.
Yes. So there are rules for hunting all around the world. There's different seasons, different amounts of animals you can kill, and if you don't follow those rules, you're poaching. So in this part of the woods, no one should be hunting right now. Okay, so he knows someone's poaching. Angie?
Poaching can be like you're shooting where it's illegal.
Yep. And some people will poach animals that you shouldn't hunt at all, right? Endangered animals, there aren't enough left. We shouldn't be hunting them. All right. Someone was poaching, and he might be along in a minute to collect his prize. The shot had come from the side of the mountain, and I figured I had about 4 minutes to clean up before the poacher arrived. And we'll stop right there. Yes. All right. See you guys tomorrow.